Hello, my name is Omar Abasad. It is 4:57 p.m., April 13th, 2020. So I was curious about what exactly a novel coronavirus is. So I Googled it and I came up with this document on the health.gov.on.ca website. It's a PDF document. And it was prepared by the Ministry of Health. And it is about coronaviruses. So, what is a novel coronavirus? So, the etiologic agent, that's the topic. Coronaviruses are large enveloped ribonucleic acid RNA viruses named after their coronal crown-like surface projections observed on electronic microscopy. A novel coronavirus is a new virus that has not been previously identified in humans. Coronaviruses are zoonotonic, as they transmit between animals and people. There are at least 7 known coronaviruses that infect humans. Coronaviruses are a large family of viruses, some causing illness in people, and others that circulate among animals, including camels, cats, and bats. Rarely, animal coronaviruses can evolve and infect people and then spread between people, such as been seen with MERS, MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, and SARS, Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, and past MERS and SARS outbreak have been complex, requiring comprehensive public health responses. And it goes on to talk about the response to these outbreaks. So first, it's the identification. Clinically compatible signs and symptoms may vary by novel coronavirus. This is clinical under the title clinical presentation. Common signs include fever and respiratory symptoms such as cough, shortness of breath, and breathing difficulty. In more severe cases, infection can cause pneumonia, acute respiratory distress syndrome, severe influenza-like illness, kidney failure, and even death. The epidemiology, outbreaks of novel virus infections, this is under occurrence. Outbreaks of novel virus infections among people are always of public health concern. The risk from these outbreaks depend on characteristics of the virus, including whether and how well it spreads between people, the severity of resulting illness, and the medical or other measures available to control the impact of the virus. For example, vaccine or treatment medications. SARS is thought to have originated in the Guangdong province of China, with emergence into human population sometime in November 2002. The 2002-2003 epidemic was characterized by outbreaks worldwide, including in Canada, Singapore, Vietnam, and China. To skip ahead here, MERS was first reported in Saudi Arabia in 2012. and has since caused illness in people in more than 25 other countries. Other affected countries in the Middle East with limited transmission among adults include Jordan, Oman, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Yemen. However, for these other countries, cases have almost been exclusively limited to adults who had contact with a case of MERS, a health care facility, or camel and camel products / camel products. The novel coronavirus 2019 nCoV was first identified in December 2019 during an outbreak of pneumonia in Wuhan, China. The outbreak was initially associated with a market that sells mainly seafood, in addition to chickens, bats, marmots, and other wild animals. Subsequently, with limited human-to-human transmission, there was a spread of cases in Wuhan and surrounding areas. By mid-January 2020, cases had been identified in Thailand, Japan, South Korea, and other Chinese cities, as well as the United States. The majority of initial cases outside of Wuhan had a travel history to Wuhan, China. The incubation period, the average incubation period for seasonal human coronavirus infections is 2 days, range of 12 hours to 5 days. Novel coronaviruses have longer incubation periods. Allowing for variability and recall error exposure history based on the prior 14 days is recommended at this time for novel coronaviruses with an unknown incubation period. So when it was said that it's a new virus, what was meant was it was a new virus within a group of viruses under the heading of the coronavirus. So it's not a completely new virus. It's a subset of an existing group of viruses, which comes under the name coronavirus. Now, here it says it's spread from animals to people, but because animals have the virus, in my opinion, it doesn't necessarily mean that the virus came from the animals and jumped into the human population. It could be the other way around. It could mean that the people had it and gave it to the animals. So it could very well be that there's a mutation in the family of viruses and it jumped from human to animals. So not a lot is known, it's true. So there's a lot of theories and a lot of speculation. And if you were to do the research, you can determine yourself based on all the other information that's presented in mainstream media, in alternate media, from personal experiences of on the YouTube, from professionals who are not part of the team that put the information on the government website, because the team that provided information that is documented in the government website is under the instructions under the authority of the government. So if the government is infiltrated, then the team follows the agenda. And there is corruption and infiltration. I prove this. The Human Rights Tribunal is a classic example of infiltration. So there is corruption. And just let me expand on that a little. I touched on this before. There is an active police officer who is a human rights commissioner and was appointed recently. And a large number, and I should research the percentage of cases that is brought to the Human Rights Tribunal hearing is against the Toronto police for human rights abuses, such as racism and profiling and so on. So it's a clear case of conflict of interest, so that should not have taken place. And the premier did that appointment, from what I read. So it's such a clear, blatant conflict of interest. It just proves that there is unethical behavior and there's corruption. So what is said on the government website, if there is a conspiracy behind it, is going to reflect the conspiracy. So the information on the government website is just one source of information. There are other sources of information coming from professionals that may contradict the information on the website. My point is, just because it's coming from the government does not necessarily mean that the information is correct or is complete. It's questionable if there are other valid sources of information from doctors, people who's gone through the process, especially from doctors in this case, who has other opinions and other sets of evidence. So given that, from what I read, it's another flu virus. And like a cold, I've had some really bad colds, and I had bronchitis. And if I didn't take care of the bronchitis, I would get pneumonia. It's how the cold progresses. And of course, I survived because I'm sitting here. But there are some infections that took a longer time to get over. There were colds that I got over in 7-10 days, and there were colds that lingered for a month. But the body's natural immune system deals with it without a vaccine. Don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-government. I'm just a skeptic. I'm not into conspiracy theories. I'm into backing up what I say with facts. I'm just saying that not all the facts are presented in government websites. Is an extended state of emergency necessary? Well, it depends on your point of view. Anyway, so this whole situation is affecting me personally because I really want to work, and I can't work. And it seems to be going on and on and on for a disease that is not much more than a common cold. If there was a disease and God forbid there is. And, you know, we live in a world with terrorists and so on. So, but God forbid it doesn't happen. But I'm just saying, you know, if there was a disease that caused you to get unconscious in hours, minutes, with contact, I could see the total, complete lockdown. But this is a version of the common cold. So it's not making sense to me. And it's not making sense to me when I read things like somebody was fined $300,000, which is probably half the value of his house, for having a party. And a family who was fined close to $1,000 for going rollerblading. The family is living together, so there's no need to isolate to keep the 6 feet social distancing rule because they're living together, and there was absolutely no one around, and they got ticketed. The father got ticketed with his 3 kids for close to $1,000. This is a money grab. It's a tax grab. It's a money grab. Really, it is. The officer in that case should not have issued a ticket. Should not have issued a ticket. But the idea of issuing the ticket is to deter people from leaving their houses. Stay inside. So there is a lot of abuses that's taking place and a lot of violations. We're being violated for a reason that seemed to me not severe enough. It's not justified. It's not justified. So I touched on this in one of my tweets too. It's I read that India was in a lockdown as well, and it probably is still continuing. And there were all these violations, human rights violations, people getting beaten up and all that, sprayed upon. So people are locked into their houses, inside their houses, and there are cows roaming around the street with flies and all these other sanitary issues, open sewers and so on, because there are some really poor areas in India, just like in Africa, that transmits all kinds of diseases. And compared to the coronavirus, these diseases will kill. It absolutely will kill. But here we have the whole of India locked down for a virus that causes a bad cold. Does that make sense to you? It doesn't to me. And also, there's another interesting fallout of this whole thing. When companies, because of this whole pandemic, companies' shares plummets, from $80 to $3. Who's buying up the shares? So I read an article in which it was attempted to pass in the House, or Justin Trudeau tried to pass the legislation that gave the government power to buy up shares in the company. So who is buying up the shares? Governments? Chinese companies buying up Canadian companies' shares? And if the government is subsidizing wages of a company's employee, would the company that the person is working for, would the company be asked to keep running records of the health of the employee and submit that to the government? If a vaccination and a vaccination record that needs that I read that you'd have to carry around a record or a chip or a stamp on your arm or something, most likely a chip, of course, that you have been vaccinated for whatever it is that they're demanding that you get vaccinated for. Is your temperature going to be taken every time you go to work? Is your employer going to ask you questions like, what did you do last night? And what happens if you don't social distance in the workplace? Does your employer call the cops on you? So it just does not sit right with me. It's not making sense to me that such drastic measures are being put in place for a version of a cold. So in Ontario, we have another 4 weeks of a state of emergency. Of course, it'll be the law because you're going to get a ticket for $1,000 or more. That's a lot of money in times when you can't find a job. I mean, even for rich people, where do you put the money? In the stock market? But the stock market is not safe anymore. So this is affecting everybody: rich, poor, powerful, weak, healthy, unhealthy, men, women, everyone. Everyone. So where is it coming from? Where is it coming from? Given that the whole thing could have been stopped in China because there was information flowing all over the place that there is this virus and it's causing, I heard men, I read somewhere men are being infected more than women, so killing off men more. So there's this virus that's causing all kinds of issues, another strain of virus. So, and mostly people who have compromised lung capacity to start with because they're smoking. I read somewhere that most men in China, in the province, they were smokers to start with, so their lungs were compromised. So they're killing off the men more than the women. So where is it coming from? Given that it could have been stopped in China. Given that there was SARS and there was a preview of this to come, right? The SARS was a preview. This is the first. Let's just say it's an experiment. So the SARS was a smaller version of the experiment. And here we have the bigger version. We all know experiments are run all the time. It's been done in the past. I'm being experimented on here at 25 Bamberg Circle in Toronto. So if this experiment is being carried out, it lends credibility to the existence of other experiments being carried out, right? And it's ongoing. It's ongoing. So let's show you some of the signals that's part of the experiment. So swollen, hurting. My ears are hurting. And here is a huge RF reading right there. See the RF reading there? That's the pulses in the arm. Sharp pains into the arm. And I demonstrated before these signals when the RF reading is high. See that RF reading there? So the shoulders, the eyes, and you'll get cataracts when this happens. The neck. The neck is being pulsed right now really, really badly. And it's really painful. The heart. That's the heart. The obliques. Notice the brightness of the alarm varies from spot to spot. That's because I'm being hit with an array, so it just sprays the body, certain spots with varying power. An experiment. So I'm just going to take my pressure. So 124/81. And the pulse is 66. It's a little bit low. The pulse is a little bit low. So I'm going to take it one more time. And the leg is being pulsed. See that 33 there? That's my leg being pulsed. See this number right there? That's my leg being pulsed. and 21, and somebody's knocking above me. So 119 over 76. And somebody's knocking right at the corner out here. So every time I eat, I get zapped on the side, like chest. I'm not sure if you could hear that. The back, left back, the chest. And if I were to take the temperature, actually I'd have to take the cuffs off. So let me take the blood pressure one more time, and then I'll take the cuffs off. So I feel like right now, given the signals and the power, I feel like the start, the very, very start of getting a cold. The sinuses, the temple, which gives you a headache. The throat, hurts. So you have an achy feeling on the body, and here is your ache right here. That's your ache right here. The back, I don't have any magnets on me. On the back and chest. The back, the shoulder, and the shoulder feels like something is pressing on it. Like there is a weight on my shoulder. That's how it feels right now. The other side. The neck, the back of the head. The head. I have a headache right now. The temple. That's the temple right there. The eyes. The other eye. So do I have COVID-19? Now, if I were to go to the hospital, would I get diagnosed? Because given that everybody has some of the RNA, some part of the genes in our bodies, because we all had colds before, right? We all had colds before, meaning that we all have a part of that virus in us. And you have all these other symptoms. So you do a swab. What's the testing for? Is it testing for that specific strain of virus? Keep in mind, we don't know exactly what it is quite yet. Well, maybe they do now, but how specific is the test? Is it specifically saying COVID-19, the variation, the mutation, the version of coronavirus? Is that being tested for? Or is the test covering just coronavirus, the whole group? And the whole group would have something in common with each other, because it starts with one version and then it mutates. But the mutation would always have part of the original cell, the original virus. So what is the test testing for? Is it specific to that mutation? Or is it testing for just the coronavirus, which is going to be just across the board, any coronavirus, the common element that is in all of the coronaviruses? I want answers to that. Now, given that the economy is at stake And of course, the economy is not at stake because most people, when they got sick, they stayed home. They isolated. The last time I isolated, I got fired, by the way. So most people isolate, they stay home. Or you're sent home if your employer is smart enough. So how's that different from this version of the virus? So my blood pressure went down. Again, as I said, I'm a skeptic. My point is, what's being fed to us, keep in mind, the head of the World Health Organization said in one of his outlandish tweets, speeches, a part of it. He said that the people of the country belongs to the politicians, and the politicians, and I'm paraphrasing, the politicians make decisions for them. The people belong to the politicians. Now, if you belong to somebody, it means that your person is your master, right? You do what the master tells you to do. He knows what's best for you. So, not making sense to me. Of course, again, I'm not saying not to follow the rules and the law, but if you want to have human rights, if you want to be a human being and not a robot, and there are some people who will go for the robots, fine, go for it, I say. But for those of you who do want to remain as human beings and not treated as robots, but treated as a human being, then we should take steps to protect our human rights and protect our democracy and to expose the people who are undermining it and trying to put a system in place that resembles communism. And I think it's going to be much, much worse than communism. Communism is degradation, yes, but what's coming down the line in this case is possession, not ownership of the person, but complete possession of the person, meaning mind, body, and if you have a soul, the soul, if you believe in a soul. Because a chip is meant to completely control you. You're not only going to be controlled, you're not going to, your movements are not going to be the only thing that's controlled and tracked, but what you eat, what you say, what you breathe, how much interaction you have with your family, how many times you left your house, of course, where you go out of the country. What you, and the brain chip, of course, would then be monitoring your thoughts. And that's already being done in China by employers. They are monitoring your brainwave patterns by external sensors, but they're aiming for the chip. And so somebody in a office is looking at this computer that's looking at your vital signs, your heart rate, your blood pressure, your stress level, your brainwave patterns, and determine whether you're stressed or not. And when there's a flag, the red flag goes off on the computer screen, somebody's going to tap you on the shoulder and ask what's wrong and if they can help you, quote unquote, in the interest of business. This is good for business. But is what is good for business always good for the human being? Why is big business driving this? Because big business is driving this. The reason we're home is because big business wants it that way. It's about money. It's about huge corporations who wants to drive the little guys out of business, which is why the small businesses are closed. And the power is going to be concentrated in these huge corporations that's globally based. The tentacles will be all over the world. And that's going to be feeding into this committee of 13 people who are fighting each other for spots on this committee, called the New World Order. This is, well, how do I know this? Or why am I projecting this? Because this is what's going on at 25 Bamberg Circle. This is the experiment that's being done in this building. There are meetings in this building, and residents are competing against each other for spots on the committee, who takes turns to monitor me, to run experiments on me, to run red alerts. And when it's red alerted, it means that the power is turned up. The power is turned up. And I verbalize, and they get a reaction, which they're recording. And they're going to document that. They're going to discuss it. They're going to feed it into the program, into the template, change the template for the next time under the next manager who does the same thing with the next team. This is an experiment on a very small scale that was always intended to be rolled out globally, which is the reason why I'm a skeptic about what's being fed to us. I know there's an experiment being run at 25 Bamberg Circle that is paralleling what I'm seeing under COVID-19. Now, what's being used to blackmail me or try to blackmail me into keeping my mouth shut outside the window is the informants, and some of them are the workers, are talking about what they're recording inside of my home and threatening to release these videos publicly, which of course they have. And not only that, they've piggybacked on it to make it look really bad, and released those as well to make it look like I was the one who was doing it. They're using doubles, they're using voiceovers, they're using piggybacking to defame me and to paint me in a certain way. So this is being used to threaten me into shutting up about what's going on in the building. So if you look at my resume, the companies that I worked for, and you'll see a lot of movement in my resume, and this is one of the reasons, because I was flagged about 15 years ago, to my knowledge, I mean, a lot earlier than that. And in every situation that I ended up in the workplace, I was monitored, and I was surveilled illegally, and information was being gathered about me, which is what they do in China under communism. And based on the information that's being gathered on me, the next job is going to piggyback on it, or the next team, whether it's in the workplace or not, will piggyback on that. So there's a curve. You're allowed to do well, and then the rug is pulled right out from under you. So here we had the economy, the global economy, doing great. The TSX was doing 17,000 plus. Bull market all the way. And then one day we got up and the rug was gone. We're flat on our behinds. Do you see a parallel? Because everybody knows about Omar Rampersad. Omar Rampersad is globally known, but nothing has been disclosed to Omar Rampersad. Because it's an experiment. Omar Rampersad was being used as an example, a global example. It's called well, it's training, but there is another term that I was looking for. It's a form of predictive programming, telling you what is going to be done to you by doing it to somebody else. So my blood pressure, 120/83. I'm going to do it one more time because my stomach is growling. And when my stomach is hit, because of the heat that's generated, and I'll take some temperature after when I take my cuffs off, your whole body just bloats up and gases are formed inside of your body because your body gets really, really hot. And when your stomach is pulsed, immediately, your stomach gets bloated with gas, basically. I can't believe I just talked for 46 minutes. So 126/83. So let's see here. So I did it 4 times. So it went from 119/76, 113/83, 120/83, 126/83, 70, 71, 69, 72 is the heart rate. So the top number increased and decreased. The lower number seemed to have been stable. So it's a pain response. So it went 119, 113, 120, 126. So I'm going to take the cuffs off. And I'm going to take some blood pressure readings. Of course, I don't have anything under my arm. 36.9, which is high. 37.4. And the 37.4 is because of this. See, it's being pulsed right here and right on the arm. The arm is being hit and the arm is, and I just got a scan on the chest. There it is right there. The arm is being hit. At a high power. It's very, very sore. And the left side is not being hit with as high a power as this side here. And that's why the temperature was 37.4. So let me do that again. $37.3. So the achy feeling, 37.2. So that achy feeling that you get when you have a cold, I have it right now. Do I have a cold? No. Now, if you test me for a coronavirus, of course it's going to come positive, 36.9, because I've had the cold how many times since I was born? I'll be 60 in 4 weeks, less than 4 weeks. How many times do you think I had a cold? Well, let me see. Despite being hit with these signals, I've had a cold on average of maybe once a year because I shield. An average of once a year. There's a few times in the last couple of years that I had 2 colds in a year. And I mean, this is bad cold. It went on for maybe a month that I had to really look after myself and really take care of. And the last 12 months, I've had a cold maybe twice. Even with the power turned up because I shield and I take care of myself. I do a lot of anti-inflammatories. Here is a good point. 36 times. If you take care of yourself and you have a good immune system, and you really, and I mean, you really do pay attention to what you eat, and boost your immune system, load up on the things that boost your immune system, vitamin C, anti-inflammatories like turmeric, ginger. I eat a lot of curry recently. I do vitamin C. I do probiotics, which is actually part of the immune system, believe it or not. I also take a form of iron because radiation affects your iron level. I do vitamin D. It has something to do with affecting, if you Google Magda, she's a doctor from U of T, Havas, Havas. She has a really, really good website detailing how these signals affect your blood and affect the stickiness of the blood and the blood's ability, the red blood cells' ability to transport oxygen where it's needed. So that's why I take iron. I take magnesium. That's my doctor's orders. I take turmeric with pepperine, and the pepperine is supposed to increase the bioavailability. Yes, I said that right. The bioavailability of the curcumin, which is the agent that works as the anti-inflammatory agent. I also take some eye supplements because I haven't been going out to buy my green veggies recently. So to tell you the truth, I'm scared to leave home because I'm a target. And every time I leave, I get red alerted. And the cops are called and the power is turned up on me. I almost keeled over a couple of times. The power was turned up so high, I almost fell over. Especially when your air is being hit, it affects your balance and you could just fall. You just fall without even, in a second, you'll hit the floor. Because it affects your balance, and you'll get a sudden spinning effect. I've got to the point where I can sometimes, when the power is not too high, I can actually subconsciously correct that, because once if you get like the feeling that you're going to fall and you get a sudden dizzy spell, and your subconscious mind is telling you this is not, you're not going to fall, this is not, and there is no underlying issues, you're just being hit, you're just being red alerted. Immediately your body rectifies itself. But if in your subconscious mind you think, oh my God, I'm going to fall and something is terribly wrong with me and I'm going to fall, you will fall. But these things are, I'm bordering again on the spiritual side of this. It comes from meditation. You can because you know that you're, and I'm talking so much, I'm going to shut up. It's going to be close to an hour. Yeah, it's 54 minutes. So I'm going to shut up in an hour, after an hour. If you program your subconscious mind, you can pretty much do anything. There is a and I'm going to draw from my Eastern Indian Eastern philosophy root here. There is a little story in one of the Indian texts that tells about a person, a yogi who did a lot of meditation, who drank poison And his mind was so conditioned that he did not die. There is also another story where somebody shot a bullet. No, it was an arrow. Excuse me. There wouldn't have been a bullet back then. An arrow, and he had conditioned himself and was so trained that he stopped the arrow with his hand, but it wasn't really his hand that stopped the arrow. It was the electromagnetic field that was generated around his body. It was so strong that the arrow could not penetrate it. This is what you could do with your mind, and you don't need a chip. And to go on the Christian side, because I have both exposure, both sides. I've been exposed to both sides. When Jesus Christ had one of the what's her name? When the woman, was it Mary? Mary Magdalene, when he touched his robe, I think that was her. I can't remember exactly the names now. It's a long time since I read it. I heard this. I didn't actually read it. I heard it. When she touched his robe, Jesus Christ's robe, and he felt the energy being pulled from his body. Well, it's the same idea where a priest in India, the yogis, where they pray on you and they put the hand on you. This was done in Trinidad to me. It's actually the electromagnetic field, the healing frequency, that is actually affecting your body and bringing it back into equilibrium. Well, that's exactly what Jesus Christ felt when the woman touched his robe. He was so sensitized and he was so trained in the art of meditation and he had transcended, really. So he felt the pull and the woman was healed, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it went something like that. I don't go to church. I don't go to Indian temple either. I used to for yoga, but I did a few times for lectures, but I don't really go a lot. I never went a lot for like prayers. I used to take my mother a lot when my mother was alive, but I never went personally. For me personally, we used to go for my mother, but it was a good thing. There are, even if you don't believe in the religion, there are a lot of things that you pick up, like the stories I just told you, that just resonates with you and you learn. So churches are good things. So here we are, we can't go to church. It's Easter and there are people who can't go to church. I don't know, folks. So I'm going to shut up now. It's 58 minutes. Okay. All right. Talk to you another time.